Ethan lay on the cold stone floor of the ruined hall. The air smelled of smoke and dust, and the walls were broken from the battle that had ended only hours before. His side burned with pain, a deep wound that made it hard for him to breathe. He pressed his hand against it, but the blood still came through his fingers. His body wanted to rest, but his mind would not let him fall asleep. He feared if he closed his eyes, he would never open them again. The silence of the empty hall was heavy. Only the sound of crackling fire from fallen torches and the faint cries of wounded men far away broke the stillness. Ethan's vision blurred, but he forced himself to keep watching the doorway. He did not know if an enemy would walk through or if it would be a friend. His heart beat fast, though his body was weak. He thought of why he had come here. He had been a soldier all his life, carrying a sword not for glory, but because there was no other way for him. He fought for his people, for the hope of peace, though peace never seemed to come. Now he wondered if all of it had been worth it. He was one man among thousands, and the world would forget his name. But deep inside him, he still hoped someone would remember. The sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall, slow, steady, and sure. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He tried to lift his sword, but his hand was too weak. He let the blade fall with a dull sound against the stone floor. The footsteps grew closer. His heart pounded as he struggled to sit up, his body trembling with the effort. He would not meet death lying down. From the shadows, a figure appeared. At first, his tired eyes thought it was another soldier, but as she stepped into the light of the burning torches, he saw it was not. She was tall, graceful, and carried herself with strength. Her armor shone with silver and gold even through the dust of battle. Upon her head was a crown, simple but powerful. Her eyes met his, and he felt a strange pull in his chest. He knew who she was, though he had never stood so close to her before. It was the Queen. Ethan tried to speak, but only a broken sound left his lips. The Queen walked toward him without fear, her steps soft against the broken floor. She knelt beside him, her presence so close he could feel the warmth of her breath. Her hand reached out, steady and sure, and touched the wound at his side. Ethan gasped at the sudden pressure, but her touch was not cruel. It was careful, almost gentle. He had never imagined a ruler lowering herself to tend to a soldier, yet here she was. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something deeper. She looked at him as if she had seen him before, as if he was more than a nameless fighter on the field. Ethan stared back, trying to understand what she saw in him. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint crackle of flames around the hall. Then she spoke, her voice low and filled with something he could not name. She said, "So, it was you. After all these years." Her words struck him harder than the wound in his side. Confusion filled his mind. How could the Queen know him? He was no one, just a man who had carried a sword for his kingdom. Yet her gaze told him she remembered something from a time long past. Ethan tried to answer, but his strength was nearly gone. His lips formed words, but no sound came. He felt her hand steady against his wound, keeping him in the world of the living. For the first time since the battle began, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe his life had meant more than he believed. Maybe the Queen's words would give his struggle a meaning he had never understood until now. The hall around them was broken and burned, but in that single moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was the bond that her words had awakened. A bond that tied a soldier and a queen together across years of war and silence. The Queen's hand pressed gently against Ethan's side, and for a moment the pain eased. He looked into her eyes, still struggling to believe that she was truly there beside him. She was the ruler of the realm, a figure spoken of with awe, yet now she was close enough that he could see the lines of care and strength on her face. The air around them felt heavy, but not from the smoke. It was something else, something deeper that neither of them could name. Ethan tried again to speak. His voice was weak, but he managed to whisper, "Why do you know me?" His words carried both confusion and hope. He had been one soldier among many, never expecting to be remembered by anyone, much less the Queen herself. The Queen's eyes did not leave his. She seemed to be searching his face, as if looking for a memory buried beneath the scars and the dirt. Her lips parted slowly, and her voice came soft yet steady. "Years ago, on a night when the city was burning, you saved someone who should have been lost. You never asked her name, you never sought reward, You simply fought even when you could have run." Ethan's heart began to race as her words stirred the memory he had carried all his life. He remembered the siege, the endless fire, and the shadows of enemies closing in. I'd seen a cloaked figure cornered, and without thinking, he had thrown himself into the fight. He had cut down 3 men, his body bruised and broken, but he had led her away through the smoke. He never asked who she was. All he knew was that he could not leave her to die. He had thought of that night many times, always wondering if she had lived. Now the truth was before him. "You were there," Ethan whispered, his voice shaking. "It was you." The Queen gave a small nod. "I have not forgotten. Through every battle, through every year of rule, I remembered the man who stood when no one else did. I searched for you, but the world is vast, and names are easily lost in war. Still, I held on to the hope that one day I would find you again." Ethan felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. Pride because the Queen herself had carried his memory for so long. Sorrow because he had lived all those years thinking he was nothing more than a shadow in the army. To learn that he had mattered, that he had changed something in the life of the one who now ruled, was almost too much for him to bear. The hall was quiet, the soldiers at a distance, watching but saying nothing. None of them dared to break the silence. They could see that their queen was no longer speaking as a ruler, but as a woman who had found something she thought she had lost forever. Ethan's breath grew shallow, and he closed his eyes for a moment, trying to hold on to the strength that was slipping away. The Queen placed her other hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Do not leave me now," she said softly, but with command in her tone. "You gave me life once before. I will not let you fall now." Her words cut through the haze of pain. Ethan forced his eyes open, staring into hers. "I am only one man," he said. "My life is not worth more than the thousands who fell here today." She shook her head, her braid falling over her shoulder as she leaned closer. "You were wrong. You gave me the chance to lead. Without you, I would not have stood where I do now. The fate of this kingdom rests on choices made in moments no one else sees. And you were the one who made that choice for me." Tears stung Ethan's eyes, though he had not cried in years. He had carried the weight of war, the loss of friends, the endless marches into blood and fire. And yet here, in the broken hall, with the Queen kneeling beside him, he felt lighter. For the first time, he believed his life had meaning beyond the battlefield. The Queen's hand never left his wound. Her presence was both strength and comfort. Ethan closed his eyes once more, not in weakness, but in peace. He knew now that his story had not been forgotten. It had been seen. He had been remembered. And though the future was uncertain, in that moment between soldier and queen, he felt the spark of something greater than war. A bond that would shape both their lives from that day forward. The night grew quiet as the fires of battle slowly burned down. Ethan lay against the cold floor, his body weak, but his mind alive with memories. The Queen's words had awakened something long hidden in his heart. He had thought himself forgotten, but she had carried his face in her memory for years. That truth gave him strength, though his wound still burned. The Queen did not rise. She remained beside him, her hands steady against his side. Her soldiers waited in the shadows guarding the hall, yet none dared to step forward. They knew their queen was not to be disturbed. Her focus was on Ethan, and Ethan alone. He opened his eyes once more, meeting her gaze. "I never thought I would see you again," he said softly. "You were always close," she answered. "Even when I could not find you, I carried you here." She touched her chest lightly with her free hand, above her heart. "Through every victory, every loss, I thought of the soldier who saved me." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He had been through so many battles since that night. He had lost friends, brothers, and leaders. He had stood on fields where the ground turned red, and he had wondered why he still lived when so many others did not. Now, for the first time, he understood. His life had not been a string of meaningless fights. It had been leading him back to this moment. "Why did you never tell anyone?" Ethan asked. The Queen looked away for a brief moment, her eyes fixed on the broken pillars of the hall. "A ruler is not free to speak of everything. I could not tell the world that I owed my life to one soldier. They would have never understood. They would have called it weakness. But in my silence, I still remembered. I waited, hoping fate would return you to me." Her honesty filled Ethan with both sorrow and comfort. He understood her burden, yet he wished she had not carried it alone. He reached out with his trembling hand, touching the edge of her armored wrist. His fingers brushed the cold metal, and though the touch was small, it carried the weight of all the years between them. "I am glad you waited," he said. The queen turned back to him, her face calm, but her eyes shining with emotion she could not hide. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. "Do you remember the fire?" Ethan closed his eyes and nodded. The memory was burned into him as clearly as the scar on his side. He remembered the city walls breaking, the air filled with smoke and screams. He remembered the cloaked figure trapped against the flames, and how he had fought without thinking. He remembered pulling her through the burning streets, his body aching with each step, until they reached the safety of the river's edge. He remembered her voice, soft and shaken, thanking him before she disappeared into the night. He had never known who she was until now. "Remember," he whispered, "I thought I dreamed it, sometimes. I thought you were gone. You never dreamed it," she said. "It was real, and it has never left me." The hall grew still again. Outside, the sounds of soldiers clearing the field echoed faintly, but within the broken walls, it felt as if time itself had stopped. Ethan's breath was shallow, but his heart beat stronger than it had in years. He knew he was weak, yet he also knew that his story was not yet over. The queen leaned closer, her crown glinting in the dim light. "Ethan," she said, calling his name for the first time. "Do not believe you are only one man. You are more. You are the reason I am here. The reason this crown rests upon my head." Her words filled him with warmth that even the pain of his wound could not erase. For so long he had seen himself as nothing more than a soldier, a nameless figure in the tide of war. Now he saw himself through her eyes, not nameless, not forgotten, but remembered, honored, and needed. He looked at her, his voice no more than a whisper. "Then let me stand for you again." The queen held his gaze, her hand pressing firmly against his side. "You will," she said. "I will see to it. You gave me my life once. I will give you yours now." In that promise, Ethan felt the world shift. It was not just a vow between ruler and soldier. It was a bond formed in fire, sealed in silence, and now reborn in the ruins of war. The night outside the broken hall grew colder, but inside the queen still knelt by Ethan's side. Her hand stayed firm on his wound, as if her touch alone could keep him tied to the world. Round them, the last sparks of battle faded into silence. Soldiers cleared the ruins, yet none dared to disturb the queen. Her gaze was fixed on Ethan, her voice steady when she finally spoke again. "You do not understand what you gave me," she said. "That night you saved me. You gave me more than life. You gave me the strength to believe that I was meant to stand for my people. Without you, the crown might never have reached my head." Ethan's breath came slow, each word a struggle. "I never knew who you were. I only saw someone in danger." The queen's lips curved into the smallest smile. "That is what made it true. You did not fight for reward. You did not fight for a name. You fought because it was right." Her words sank deep into Ethan's heart. All the years he had thought himself forgotten, all the nights he had believed his life was just one of many, she had been carrying his memory. He felt tears burn his eyes. Though he tried to hide them, Soldier was not meant to cry, yet in her presence it no longer felt like weakness. The queen's soldiers kept their distance, but they watched with respect. They had never seen her so close to anyone. She was strong, unshaken, but tonight she looked like more than a ruler. She looked like a woman who had found something she thought she had lost. Ethan's hand trembled as he reached for her wrist. His fingers touched the edge of her armor, and his voice came out weak but clear. "If I gave you life once, let me serve you again. Do not carry this burden alone." She looked at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. "You have already given me more than I could ever ask, but I will not refuse your strength. I will not let you fade into the shadows again. You will stand beside me." The promise in her tone stirred hope in Ethan's chest. He felt the world tilt, not in pain but in meaning. For so long he had fought without purpose beyond the next day, the next battle. Now, with her words, he felt as if his life was part of something greater. He thought of the men he had fought with, of the brothers he had lost, of the endless nights on cold ground. He thought of all the times he had wondered why he still lived when so many others did not. Now he understood. His life had been kept for this moment, to stand again for the one he had once saved. The queen leaned closer, her voice soft but filled with strength. Ethan nodded, though his body trembled. With everything I am. She pressed her hand harder against his wound, not with cruelty, but with determination. Then hold on, I will not lose you. Her words echoed in the broken hall, carrying more weight than any command she had given on the field. Ethan felt a warmth spread from her touch, a strength that seemed to fight against the darkness pulling him down. His body was weak, but his heart refused to let go. Time passed slowly, but he did not close his eyes. He kept looking at her, drawing strength from her presence. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. The bond between them was stronger than the pain in his side, stronger than the silence of the ruins. At last, the queen spoke again. When the world looks at me, they see a crown, a ruler, a symbol. But when I look at you, I see the truth. I see the one who gave me the chance to be all of that. Do not forget it, Ethan. You are not just a soldier. You are the reason I stand here. Her words filled the hall with a power no torch could match. Ethan let out a long breath, his body still aching, but his spirit alive. He whispered, "Then I will stand as long as you need me." And in that moment, beneath the broken roof and the fading firelight, they were no longer just a queen and a soldier. No. They were two lives bound together by fate, by memory, and by a promise that would not break. The hall was quiet except for the faint crackle of dying flames. Ethan breathed slowly, fighting against the weight that pulled him down. The queen's hand was still pressed against his side, steady and firm, her presence keeping him awake. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years he felt peace. The pain was still sharp, but her words and her touch gave him strength to hold on. The soldiers who guarded the edges of the hall shifted uneasily, waiting for orders that never came. They could see their queen had chosen to stay, not as a ruler above them, but as someone who would not leave a single man behind. The sight of her kneeling beside Ethan was something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. Ethan's lips moved slowly, forming words that came out weak but clear. "I never thought my life mattered." The queen shook her head gently. "It always mattered. You saved me when I was only a woman with no crown, no throne, and no army. You gave me the chance to rise. That moment shaped everything that followed. Without you, there'd be no queen here tonight." He listened, his heart heavy with emotions he had buried long ago. Every battle, every march, every loss now felt different. They were not just struggles that ended in silence. They were steps that had led him to this place, to her side. "I carried your face in my memory," the queen said. "Even when I did not know your name, I remembered your courage. I remembered the man who stood when no one else did." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. He tried to smile, though his lips trembled. "And I remembered the woman I carried through the fire. I thought she was gone, but she became more than I could ever dream." The queen's hand tightened slightly on his wound, her eyes shining, though she did not let tears fall. "We are both here because of that night." It was not just a moment. It was the beginning of something greater. Ethan's body was weak, but his spirit felt stronger than it ever had. He knew now that his life had not been empty. It mattered, not just to his brothers in arms, but to the one who led them all. His sacrifice had carried meaning beyond anything he could have imagined. The queen leaned closer, her voice low, but filled with promise. "You will not be forgotten. Not while I live. Not while this crown rests upon my head. I swear to you, Ethan, your name will live as long as mine." Her vow struck him deeper than any blade. It never sought glory, never wanted fame. But to know that his story would be remembered, that his life had left a mark, filled him with peace. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink into his soul. When he opened them again, he whispered, "Then let me live. Not for myself, but for you. Let me stand beside you once more." The queen's voice grew stronger, steady as stone. I will not let you fall. I will carry you if I must. Together we will walk out of these ruins, and together we will face whatever comes." Ethan believed her. He saw no crown, no throne, no distance between them. He saw only the woman he had saved long ago, and the bond that had never been broken. He reached for her hand with what little strength he had left. She took it without hesitation, her fingers closing firmly around his. The hall around them was broken, the walls scarred, the banners burned. Yet in that ruin, something new was born. A promise between a queen and a soldier, not written in stone, but written in the hearts of those who saw it. The soldiers at the edges of the hall would remember that sight forever. They would tell the story of the night their queen knelt beside a wounded man and swore never to let him fall. But Ethan felt the darkness pulling at him, but he no longer feared it. He knew he would rise again, not as a nameless fighter, but as the man the queen herself had called back into the light. And as her voice whispered once more, steady and sure, "You will not be lost to me again." He let himself drift into a sleep that felt less like an end and more like the beginning of something eternal.